Wreckfest. A game I honestly did not expect to make a video on, let alone actually play. It was a game I always wanted. I tried it on Steam a few years back, but I didn't have a proper PC back then. I was running it on a standard laptop, no graphics card. I thought it could hack it, but it was just a mess, so I had to stop. But here we are, a few years later. It turns out it was free to play on PlayStation Plus for the PS5 version only. Now, I only had a PS4 back then, but in hopes I would get my hands on a PS5 in the near future, I put it in my library. Then I just forgot about it. I eventually got my PS5 and happened to be scrolling through my library, and there it was. I booted up and gave it a try. It's not a massive game, roughly 25 gigs, so it didn't take too long to download. But in short, Wreckfest is a racing simulation, more centered on the demolition style, bashing, crashing, vehicle parts flying everywhere. It's very fun. It was actually published by THQ Nordic, previously known as THQ, a company quite famous for a few games back in the early 2000s, before they went bankrupt and were acquired by Nordic Games, hence their new name, THQ Nordic. They made WWE games, Darksiders, Destroy All Humans, the SpongeBob games, and an interesting one, Disney Pixar Cars back on the PS2. Whilst it's almost been a decade since Wreckfest's initial release and THQ is now under new management, in my opinion I think the Rust Bucket Racerama from Cars gives us some inspiration towards Wreckfest, like they're acknowledging THQ's previous work to this day. Let's see what Wreckfest is all about, shall we? Starting out in Wreckfest was fairly straightforward. You have a few things to choose from: career, custom events, multiplayer, and the tournament. The tournament was locked for me when I first hit the menu, and I'm not sure what the requirement is, but I take it that you have to do a couple of events first to unlock it, or it could just be a limited time event, something that happens every few weeks, a few months or so. Kicking it off with career mode, it's separated into 5 championships. The number of events and trophy point requirements increase with every tier. And I haven't noticed this yet, but I would assume the championships get harder down the line. Each of these has a mix of 3 event types. Series races consist of multiple individual events where your starting position changes each round. Heat races are slightly different. It's still multiple events, but on the same track with knockout stages. Stay ahead of the pack to avoid getting eliminated. The number of laps tend to increase every time as well, although I found that this change makes the event a little boring from time to time, doing the same event 3 to 4 times with just more laps. Especially if it's one of those speedway tracks that just goes round in a circle. There's individual challenges where it's just a single random event. It could be a race, or it could be one of the unique ones like Lawnmower Demolition Derby, a race with a selected car which turns it into a survival mission of sorts depending on the vehicles you're up against. And besides lawnmowers, you can find yourself in some other wacky vehicles, school buses, sofas, or even a combine harvester. Every time you complete an event, you are rewarded with trophy points. Placing first throughout the event gives you the maximum amount of points, allowing you to progress further towards the trophy goal for your current career. Interestingly, you don't have to complete them all. There's more than enough events to get you the required trophy points, so you can kind of go about it your own way really. Although when you first start out, you may notice you can't do certain events since you don't have the right class of vehicle. So whilst you may want to stack your cash, you may need to splash out a bit from time to time if you want to complete the others. I'm pretty sure beating them all gives you an achievement or something, but it's nice having some breathing room and not being forced to complete everything. However, you have to be aware that replaying a series resets it, so you'll lose your points for that event and have to do it all over again. It's a bit annoying because some of the events I found to be really fun. I like giving it some replay value, but knowing in the back of your mind that you have to place first again to get all the points is a little jarring. It's probably best you beat the career first, then go back and replay what you want. These events also offer bonus challenges. They're not mandatory luckily, but it gives you a decent boost in XP if you complete them. Some of them require you to spin out racers, cause a certain amount of damage, stay in first for multiple laps, etc. It gives some form of flexibility because you don't have to do them, but if you want to make your race a little more exciting, you can do just that. Cause some havoc, ram a couple of racers, and so on. If you forget what you have to do mid-event, not to worry, you can just pause the game and it will have the bonus target description up there for you. You can track the main objective as well. Completing certain events allows you to unlock unique vehicles too, but under one condition. If you want the vehicle, you have to beat the challenge whilst using said vehicle. I'm halfway through the career at the moment and haven't found anything insanely challenging yet. My opinion could change when I get to the Pro and World Masters Championship though. The races are what you would expect really. I'd like to say I'm decent at racing games, so getting into it wasn't too hard. It's just these vehicles are generally slower than what I'm used to from games like The Crew 2, Need for Speed, etc. You can adjust the difficulty before each event, which provides bonus XP the harder you make it. I've been playing on normal for most of my playthrough, but recently changed it to hard for the added bonuses. You may notice a bit of rubber banding from the AI in second and third, but that's about it. If you're fast enough, you can still lap players on this difficulty. These changes also remove certain attributes along the way, things like traction control and changing your transmission to manual. Manual wasn't an issue for me. Strangely enough, it was traction control I had to get used to when making my races harder. People say it helps get better lap times since you'll have better control over the car, so to speak. I tried it and they're not wrong from my experience. I haven't used this setting much, so it takes some getting used to, but I do feel as though I can take corners better, as I'm encouraged to use the handbrake more often and drift around corners instead of fully slowing down. I have managed to overstep the mark and spin out quite a few times though. But all in all, it's down to personal preference really, and the type of car you're using, terrain, etc. There's a lot of variables when it comes to faster lap times. Besides traction control, you can tune your car to enhance its performance even more. Things like suspension can be adjusted to help keep your tyres down on particular terrain, gear ratio can be shifted to improve acceleration or top speed, differential adjustments help with cornering. There's quite a bit to experiment with, however certain races have more than just one terrain type. Dirt and tarmac for example, so mixed build may be required at times if you know your races well. Although this is fairly straightforward, it's something I'd personally still want to research a bit more since I don't typically mess with my cars to that degree. I sort of just go with the flow, but again it's personal preference. If you're a more experienced player and already know what to look for, you'd easily get the hang of this. You can also make these adjustments just before your event starts as well, which is a nice addition. New vehicle parts to improve the overall performance of your car can be unlocked from leveling up and finishing in the top 3 of events, but you'll need to purchase these afterwards. You can add some on to improve its armor, perfect for the demolition derby which I'll talk about in a bit, or you can take them off to lighten the load and improve its racing capabilities. And you can add some of your own customizations to personalize the look of your own vehicle. Wheels, exhaust, spoiler types with some wacky designs, there's quite a bit to work with here. So far, it doesn't seem too grindy on the XP side of things, but getting credits can be a bit long. It builds up quite slowly, so that's something to bear in mind. Then again, I have been playing on normal for most of my playthrough until just recently, so you may want to up the difficulty since you get more XP and credits at a faster rate. Like I said, the harder difficulties aren't that bad, just make sure you don't crash out on the last lap. When it comes to racing in multiplayer though, I'd like to say my first race went well, but within 2 laps my car went from looking like this to this.
Oh my god.
I would say that tells you all you need to know, and I would be a bit biased here since I haven't done much online racing, but overall the experience is okay. It's not horrendous, it's doable to finish a race in one piece. I think one of the most important rules when it comes to online racing is to check your rear on the first corner. I did for a split second but wasn't prepared for the onslaught of players that were going to send it around the corner. In fact, I had no idea why the game had me starting in pole position anyway. What led to my downfall here was that first corner, followed by a player targeting me on the second lap. To be fair, he does have kamikaze in his name and I fell for the oldest trick in the book once again. My poor driving put me down to a slimmer of health, all it took was for someone to sneeze on me and I'd be wrecked. But interestingly, I managed to wreck myself. Lovely stuff. Crashing into a wall isn't the same as other racing games where you can surf along it. Even just dinging a wall, fence or barrier can do some considerable damage to your car. So multiplayer was how I expected it to be, but then again, all this ramming can be excused. After all, it is called Wreckfest, dirty driving is pretty much the core of the game in some respect. You'll have people T-boning you, pinning you to walls, going off-road to cut you off, or driving in the opposite direction just so they can have a head-on collision with you. On the bright side, the realistic damage and crashes can make your car humorous to look at, but you will find some races that actually leave you alone and race normally with minimal contact. But that typically occurs at the front of the pack. So if you want to be left alone, you've got to make sure your vehicle is good enough to stay ahead, because once you're wrecked, you're out of the race. So if anything, you'll want to complete a decent chunk of the career mode first in order to obtain a vehicle that's on par with most veteran players. Or if you don't care about winning too much, you could hop in early and see how well you do despite the handicap. Also wanted to point out the spectating system here. It looked a little weird at first. This dashboard looks as if you're watching a replay or editing it, but it's actually the dashboard for spectating. You can change the camera angle, select different players and so on. It's a numbered system. I thought it was in order of their position in the race, but I think it's actually based on their placement in the pre-game lobby. I could be wrong. If anything, it's just random. But yeah, multiplayer racing is fun. I wouldn't be too worried going into it. To be honest, I went in fairly early as the car I had was one of the first few cars you can unlock. The low-end starter vehicles. On my second race I did a little better, so it's not that bad. Although sometimes the first lap can have you feeling like you're in that scene from Cars. Remember what Chick Hicks did? I still hate that guy to this day. But anyway, if you want to ramp up the chaos or see how mangled your vehicle can get, the Demolition Derby is the best thing for that. This is a major reason as to why I wanted to play this game. When I saw how realistic the damage was, I knew I'd find this mode hilarious to play. In the career mode, there's two types of Demolition Derby. There's Last Man Standing, where you all have one life and have to destroy all other vehicles in order to win. It's definitely one to be a bit more careful with because once you wreck, that's it, you're out. Typically, you can play it safe and just drive around, conserve your health whilst you let the AI or other players duke it out. However, a contact timer will pop up if you haven't hit anyone after a set amount of time, so there's already actions in place to stop players from abusing the system. The other mode, Deathmatch, is a little more relaxing in the sense that you can respawn as many times as you want. In order to finish first, you have to wreck the most players within that time frame. This is slightly different though, as your placement on the leaderboard is more so weighted on your wreck ratio rather than points. So the more people you wreck, the better, but you also need to minimize the amount of times you get wrecked to stay on top of the leaderboard. In multiplayer, it's extremely fun. It can be a bit competitive because you know they're real players, but you can just mess about with it. Placing first does give you a bit more XP and credits than the rest of the lobby, but that's pretty much the only reward, and this is a game mode more suitable for when you beat the career, you know, when you've unlocked the vehicles you wanted, or if you just want to test out a new build. It's an end game activity, so to speak. For me, I played this early, and I'll admit I am distracted from the career mode now because I find the Demolition Derby so funny. The realistic damage is what lies at the heart of Wreckfest. Head-on collisions leave everyone's engines exposed, you can spin out rival players and send them rolling, getting airtime can make your car do the wildest of flips. It's just one big carnage fest, it's so good. One thing to note though is you can tip over in this game, whether that's on your side or completely upside down. In career mode, you can press triangle to reset instantly, and you do need to be almost stationary for it to work, you know, a very low speed. However, in multiplayer it's much more tedious as it takes 5 seconds for you to reset. It's understandable as to why they've done it like this. It stops people cheesing it and spamming respawn anytime they're about to get rammed. However, in multiplayer it can be very annoying when you want to reset whilst you're tipped over and within 5 seconds someone comes and rams you, resetting the timer or actually wrecking you completely. It's cool if the initial ram puts your vehicle back upright, but it can be infuriating if you still end up upside down. I just wanted to point that out.
No. Wait.
And just lastly, playing with friends is straightforward. You just need to be in a pre-game lobby and you can invite them from there. I was a bit confused at first. I thought you had to party up and make a group beforehand, but it seems like the pre-game invite is the only way to do it. Not to worry though, most games you join are already ongoing matches, so there'll most likely be space for you and your friends, as many players leave the match afterwards, so it works out in the end. The player base is pretty healthy. I haven't had trouble finding games, in fact they're almost instant. However, you can expect the lobbies to be a bit empty towards the evening times, and with summer coming to an end soon, as of making this video, the lobbies could get smaller. But still, multiplayer is a blast. I highly recommend hopping into a couple games every now and again. That's if you ever get bored of grinding career mode. It's honestly so much fun, and the quick matches make it easy to get into if you just want to run a couple races or derbies with some friends. That's all I got to say on Wreckfest for now. It's a solid game, and I'm sure many players were appreciative of the fact that it was free a few months ago. It's relatively cheap on the PlayStation Store, but the price could go down soon. I think it was reduced during the summer sale just gone, so we may not see any changes till Black Friday, or if a random offer pops up. But hey, if you love racing with a mix of destruction and seeing all the possible shapes you can turn a vehicle into, Wreckfest is the game for you. It's so good. I hope you guys enjoyed. It's been Dre, take care and see you next time.